Welcome to this latest edition in our video interview series here at iConnect. My name is Richard Albert, and along with Tom Ginsberg and David Landau, I'm a founding co-editor of this blog. Today we feature a series called Five Questions that we ask to a scholar of public law. Today, Yvonne Tu, Associate Professor of Law at Georgetown University, and also a good friend. Good to see you, Yvonne.
Hi, Richard. Great to see you. Thank you for having me.
Happy to do this. As you know, this series is an opportunity for us to learn a bit about you and your work and your journey to becoming a law professor. So let's just dive in with the question that I think most people are most interested in, which is, what are you working on right now?
Great. So I've just completed my book manuscript on constitutional statecraft in Asian courts, which will be forthcoming this summer. So right now I'm turning to a new research project, which is on strategic judicial empowerment. And that's a project framed in broad global perspective, exploring the use of judicial strategy to enhance the court's institutional position. So what I'm interested in this new project is focusing on a couple of different contexts, some in less explored contexts in the global south, like courts in fragile democracies in Asia, such as Pakistan, Indonesia, Malaysia, as well as courts that have successfully strengthened their position over the years, like the Taiwan and Korean constitutional courts. And it also includes examples from more established democracies, such as the UK Supreme Court, especially in the light of the court's Miller case last year on the Prime Minister's prorogation of Parliament. So the question that I seek to explore is, how do courts across these various democratic contexts negotiate different configurations of political power to establish their own judicial power? And I'm particularly interested in the strategic or deliberate ways in which courts expand or strengthen their institutional position.
Very interesting, exciting, and timely. And congrats on the book, by the way. We look forward to seeing it in print, I guess, in August.
Thank you. I'm very excited too.
So how and when do you write, Yvonne? Do you have a routine that you use every day or every other day, or do you just write whenever you have the time to do it, whenever you're moved to write?
Right. So, I mean, I think it's fair to say that I try to have a routine. Ideally, on a regular work day, I aim to write in the morning, so the first thing in the morning. During the teaching semester, even if I'm teaching on a particular day, I typically teach in the afternoon, so I try to write for at least a little bit, at least say 30 minutes, even if I have to prepare for a class, and then I teach, attend meetings, and everything else that comes into the day. So when I don't have a class and I have a more open schedule, like in the summer, like right now, then I try to plan out the hours for writing in any particular day, in the mornings and afternoons, and then I try to stick to it. So I have good intentions, at least.
When did you know that this is what you wanted to do, that you wanted a career as a scholar, as a professor of law?
I think I would describe the process as evolutionary rather than a big bang moment. I didn't start law school as an undergraduate knowing that I definitely wanted to be a law professor. My twin passions, though, since high school and in university, have always been writing and debating. And during my first law degree, which was at the Cambridge University in the UK, I found that the bits about the law that really interested me the most was not so much the doctrinal black letter law, although those are important too, but the big picture questions, the theoretical questions, the policy questions, questions about what the law should be. And I decided I was interested and I wanted to continue to pursue these interests. I did an LLM at Harvard Law, where I wrote a dissertation. I became increasingly interested in constitutional law, both on a macro level, because I found it, intellectually fascinating, but also because on a micro level, you can see its impact, I think, so deeply at an individual level on lives of people in different contexts. So later, I wanted a scholarship to do my PhD in comparative constitutional law at the University of Cambridge. And I remember thinking quite deeply about whether or not I was sure I wanted to do it. I actually deferred the PhD for a little while and spent some time exploring a couple of other fields. I worked a little bit at the UN. I spent some time doing human rights work and in Malaysia. and I taught a little bit. And at the end of all of that, I decided that what I really did want to do was to gain more expertise in constitutionalism and use that knowledge to continue to write and to teach. I love teaching, and to work with ideas about emerging constitutionalism in developing democracies.
Fascinating journey. Well, we're glad you made the choice that you did.
I'm very glad I did too. It's been a great journey, actually, and I've been very blessed all along the way.
Let me invite you, Yvonne, to think back to your first degree at Cambridge, or maybe even at Harvard Law School, where you and I met, in fact.
Really?
You did your master's degree in law. Think back to that time. Was there a book that you encountered, a chapter that you read, a paper that you read that was important to you then, that continues today to resonate with you, not only as a scholar, as you approach the law, but how you think about your craft as a scholar?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. And I think there's an influential moment, which was influential to my thinking in the ways that you described to my craft and how I continue to think about the law, which seems to be the spirit of your question. And that moment happened in my very first year as an undergraduate as a tentative, let's say, first year undergraduate at the University of Cambridge with a very eminent professor, the eminent Rouse Ball professor of English law, at that point, Professor David Feldman, who was my first constitutional law teacher, actually. And the first question he asked, so the first question I really encountered in law school, and the first essay I had to write a response to at Cambridge was this: does the UK have a constitution, and does it matter? In other words, like getting to this got, of course, to the heart of the broader question, which is, can you have constitutionalism without a constitution? Or, to put it another way, can you have a constitution without constitutionalism? And this, of course, brings in all these deeper questions about what is a constitution? What is constitutionalism? Are they necessarily related? How do you construct one with or without the other? Professor Feldman attempted to answer this question himself in his inaugural lecture as the Rouse Ball Professor of English Law at Cambridge, which I attended. And that lecture is now published as an article, None, One, or Several Perspectives on the UK's Constitution. So I suppose if you think it's cheating to name a moment rather than a publication, I could pick that article. But there have been many other articles and books that influenced me even in my undergraduate degree. I remember reading Joseph Raz's The Rule of Law as a first-year law student. And it struck me then as a model of clarity and forcefulness in staking out a position, which I continue to admire, even though I don't entirely agree with his position. But still today, I think the question I come back to the most from my time as a young law student is, what does constitutionalism mean? What does a constitution mean? And how can you use law and constitutions to construct constitutionalism? So I feel ever since that moment, in my first year fledgling law moment, I've been trying to answer the question that Professor Feldman posed to me in one way or the other. It's certainly a theme that I return to over and over again in my work on comparative constitutionalism in evolving and fragile constitutional democracies. And it's certainly one that I continue to think about, and it's a question that I now pose my students when I teach comparative constitutional law or constitutional law at Georgetown.
Oh, thanks for sharing that. You know, there's often a debate around the world today and in the past 20 years about what is a constitutional moment. Well, we have an example now. This was certainly a constitutional moment, at least for you.
Exactly.
So Yvonne, you spent a lot of time with us today. I know you want to get back to your writing. So let me just ask you one more question just to round out the interview. I'd like our readers or viewers to learn a bit more about your work if they don't already know about it, if they have not yet encountered your work. So if you can maybe answer the following question, I'll put a link to the answer you give me in the blog post publishing this video. And the question is this:
okay.
Of all your papers, all your chapters, all your books, is there one that is dearest to you, most important to you, one that you'd like me to share with our readers and viewers to learn a bit more about you?
Well, I think it would have to be Constitutional Statecraft in Asian Courts, which is which is to be published this August by Oxford University Press. The book, it's a book that I've been working on for some time, and it explores how courts engage in what I call constitutional statecraft or constitutional state building in aspiring yet deeply fragile democracies in Asia. And it offers an in-depth look at a couple of contemporary emerging Southeast Asian democracies like Malaysia and Singapore, and how courts there could protect and construct constitutionalism even as they confront powerful political dominant parties and negotiate political transitions. So the reason why this book is close to my heart is that the project of the book really lies at the intersection of my intellectual passions and personal background. Right? From a scholarly perspective, it grapples with the questions at the heart of what I find most perplexing and exciting, as I discussed earlier. How can constitutionalism and courts act to shore up the world's new democracies? What does a constitution, what does constitutionalism mean in a fragile and emerging democracy? And from a personal perspective, as someone who was born and grew up in Malaysia, in some ways, this book is something like a love letter to that richly pluralistic yet deeply divided country, which in the last 2 years alone has undergone both a democratic transition and then a government collapse. So in that sense, it is a work about the endeavor of building democracy and constructing constitutionalism for all Malaysians who continue to hope.
Well, with that description, we have to read the book now. I mean, you've made me so excited to get my hands on it. Of course, I had a preview of it when you came and visited us here at Texas last year to give a paper at my invitation. We're so happy to have it in our hands, but I look forward to the actual book in my hands in a couple of months, I think in August.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Richard. I'm excited too, and I'm delighted to be able to share it at Texas in person and now virtually online.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. I know you want to get back to your writing. We want you to get back to your writing too, because you produce such good stuff, but thank you so much for agreeing to do this, and we wish you good health and safety in the days and months ahead.
Thank you so much. It's been a delight. I'm delighted to be here and to be part of the iConnect community. So thank you for having me, Richard.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.